Hello, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. What's going on, everybody? I hope you guys are doing great today. I know my day is going just fine. Well, check this out. Before we get this video podcast started, if you would please join me in a moment of silence, followed by serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers, and for those of us who are still in that struggle of this toxic world that we live in, man. So, if you would please join me in a moment of silence. God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. All right. Well, let's get going, man. So check this out. Well, today's episode, I wanted to come to you guys with I guess to just elaborate on this book that I read and see what you guys think about it, see what you're, see what you think, you know what I mean? I don't know if you may know the book, you may not. And the book is called The Kybalion. And I just finished it yesterday. I finished reading it yesterday. And pretty interesting book, you know what I mean? Pretty interesting book. And let me see if I can get it. It's let me put these things on because I can't read without them, man. You know what I mean? But check this out. There's a summary that I pulled up, and it's from booksthatSaySlay.com, and it's just a quick summary of what the Kybalion is. And the Kybalion centers around 7 primary principles or axioms, which are thought to encapsulate the core teachings of Hermeticism. These principles are not only intended to provide a framework for understanding the universe, but also serve as a guide for personal growth and spiritual development. And so right now, my journey is spiritual. You know what I mean? That's my journey today in my life. You know what I mean? To give you a little bit of a background as far as spirituality goes, I mean, I grew up in a household that was Catholic. And, as I got older and moved out and I turned to the Christian faith, which to me is the same just about, you know what I mean? It's just like, Catholic is more Bible number 1 and Christians more Bible number 2, you know what I mean? The New Testament, right? So, but nonetheless, they still believe in the same thing, right? They still believe in the same thing. And, I got saved when I was probably 14. I could remember 14, I believe 14 or 15 years old. That day I turned my life over to Jesus Christ, and that was my thing. You know what I mean? That at that particular point in my life, that was who I was, and that's what I did. You know what I mean? And as I got older through the years, I ventured through different types of. I wouldn't say I never got off that, hey, you know what, I'm not a Christian anymore. I never really got to that point, but I more decided to live my life through a spiritual sense. In other words, I started getting in tune with, okay, how was life before Jesus Christ came around? You know what I mean? What was it that made somebody say, hey, you know what, you're a good person, this is how you should live, before Jesus Christ came? You know what I mean? Because before Christ, there's a lot of time, you know what I mean? Who knows how much time, who knows how many years before that particular event took place, that how much further back were humans around? You know what I mean? So not to get all deep into that part of history or whatever, but because of that, I decided that to read more, to study more of that type of thing and see where different parts of the world, what kind of things did they do and what were they experiencing. And from what I gathered, from what I studied, from what I hear in other people's podcasts, what I hear what I get out of the things that I read, and the people that I study after, is the fact that everybody believed that there was an energy. Everybody believed that there was a light form energy that came from above somewhere. You know what I mean? And everything that we've seen, literature, documentaries, whatever, it's always been about, they don't veer off of that. So to me, it's not a coincidence, right? So there's something that has been around that makes things happen. And to me, in my interpretation, my beliefs, is that it's a divine energy. You know what I mean? It's a divine energy, and what that divine energy is, or who it is, or what it is, I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm not a scientist. I just go by what I feel in my heart and soul, and what I put into what I allow into my subconscious mind. Let's just say that. You know what I mean? And because ultimately, the things that you believe are the things that you're allowing into your subconscious mind. You know what I mean? There's no way around that. You know what I mean? That is a fact of how we live. You know what I mean? There's nobody can say that they're where they're at because something else other than what they allowed into their subconscious mind. You know what I mean? So that's just the way. That's just facts. That's just the way it is. So now, because we live in this tangible world of, feeling and seeing and touching and of material stuff, of the feeling of wanting, the feeling of being wanted. You know what I mean? Because we live in that plane, which is the physical plane, is very much so has a lot to do with how people live, what people live by. You know what I mean? So, I figured, how am I going to live a spiritual world if I'm not practicing spirituality? How am I going to sit here and tell somebody things that I know nothing about if I'm not indulging, if I'm not in there with 2 feet? You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? It'd be like it just wouldn't be a fair or even a legit video. You know what I mean? Because you're over here talking just a bunch of nonsense. But the thing is that because I study and I read and indulge in many practices, doesn't mean that they're wrong. You know what I mean? And not just me. You know what I mean? Everybody has their own opinion about that. And that's fine. You know what I mean? But myself, my frequencies, how I feel connected to the earth, how I feel connected to the universe, how I feel connected to that divine energy, to me means that I can't just do it by studying one thing. You know what I mean? It contradicts the laws of polarity. You know what I mean? It just don't make sense. If you're going to do this, then this is going to happen. If you're going to think this, well, then this has to happen. You know what I mean? It's just, you can't, if you can't just believe the things that are right here if there's things out there. You know what I mean? It contradicts. You know what I'm saying? So what I do is I seek and I want to understand what it is and how it is that people that came before you and I how they lived, and what was it that they did to make them believe that they were good people. You know what I mean? Because I don't believe that people are just bad. You know what I mean? Yeah, we have the nature of being protective and hunter gatherer and that sort of thing, and that's part of how we are. It's part of humans physically, mentally, and it's part of nature. It's part of the universe. You know what I mean? Everything has a coming and a going. Everything has a up and a down, a front and a back. You know what I'm saying? So my curiosity in that retrospect of spirituality is what keeps me moving. You know what I mean? It's what keeps me alive. And this is just myself personally. I feel that my frequencies, because I feel that I'm tapped into the frequency of the divine matrix, okay? Number one, let's just say that. And why? Because I believe that there's a divine being. I believe that there's a divine energy that moves things around. That's why the universe is in constant movement. That's why everything you see in front of you is not really there standing still. It's all in a frequency. It's all moving. It's all vibrating in one frequency form or another. You know what I mean? And it's doing that because it's coming from an energy from somewhere else. You know what I mean? There has to be something that's giving the energy and something that's pulling it. You know what I'm saying? So it can get real deep, and I don't want to get all scientific, philosophic, and spiritual. All we don't want to go too deep into that because everybody has an opinion. You know what I mean? But check this out, man. As many of you know that watch my videos, you know that I'm an addict, right? That I decided that I was going to do these my podcast because of my recovery, because of my addiction, because of the strongholds that kept me bound down for a long time, and my belief in that there's a way out. You know what I mean? And if you know anything about recovery in any sense, doesn't have to just be drug addiction. In recovery in general, there's many way outs. You know what I mean? And I know this to be true because I've lived it. You know what I mean? I've lived it, and I've gotten out quite a few times, and I've also relapsed. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit here and BS anybody, but as the years gone by, man, it's like I feel like I'm obviously a whole lot more wiser and more, I know the do's and don'ts, if you will, and but I believe that there was something that I was missing. You know what I mean? In my journey throughout my life, and I was a devout Christian for a long time, man. You know what I mean? And I practiced, I studied, I read the Holy Bible from front to back a few times. You know what I mean? And I never got that, that thing, I guess. I don't know. I just never felt it. I never got that thing that I believed and I've sat down many of times crying and praying and just, help me and I need my life to go this way or that way or whatever. And it wasn't until I decided that I needed something different in my life, right? And part of what I needed was it was a divine presence. You know what I mean? It was a divine presence, and I didn't know how I was going to get that divine presence, because everything that I had done up to that point was temporary. You know what I mean? And then for a long time, I thought, well, I said, well, I mean, we do live in a life of seasons. You know what I mean? So, I mean, this must be normal. You know what I mean? That it's just the way it is for me. You know what I'm saying? I figured, well, I mean, this is just the cards that I got dealt with, and I got to deal with it. So, you know, right now I'm sober, and hopefully I stay that way. And that's the way I thought. And then I relapsed. You know what I mean? And then now I'm back on a spiritual journey. I've been free from that world for a good little bit. And this time around, I just feel that something's telling me in my heart and soul that I need to be spiritual, that I need to be connected with Mother Earth, that I need to be connected with the energies of the divine matrix, and that not only the things that I learned and studied in the Christian faith were everything that I'm supposed to know. I'm supposed to know more. I'm supposed to know, why is it that just the Christian people are the only ones doing it right? I strongly don't believe that. You know what I mean? And now I'm not saying that they're doing it wrong. They're not. I don't believe that they are. But also, I don't believe that someone who is practicing Islam and devoted to their God, and doing things for love, and to help their fellow man, is that wrong? No, I don't believe that. You know, somebody practicing Buddhism in the Tibetan mountains, is it wrong? I don't believe that. I believe that every religion, every spiritual being has something to give this earth, and it's part of that divine matrix. It's part of those energies. And I just believe, this is just my opinion, that you have a frequency. We're all different. We're all humans. We're all the same in that form, but we have different energies, and we have different frequencies. My frequency, to me, means that I'm supposed to be tapped into the spiritual realm in a sense where I'm connected to everybody, not just connected to my Christian people. You know what I mean? I don't believe that that's true, because then I'm contradicting the things that I'm supposed to be believing as a Christian. You know what I mean? And my belief is that I'm supposed to help anybody and everything. And part of what I call my recovery arsenal is exactly that, is allowing myself to, and I'm thinking that I'm allowed to do this and practice this way, and grab a little bit of the Buddhists, grab a little bit of the Islamic tradition, grab a little bit of the Jewish people, grab a little bit of the Hermetic teachings, grab a little bit of the indigenous folks. Because if it's all got to do with love and energies of a divine sense, it can't be wrong. I just don't believe that. You know what I mean? How could that be wrong? It can't. You know what I mean? I don't believe that, you know, we're blinded in that sense. You know what I mean? I believe that if we believe that we're tapped into that energy, no matter if you're tapped in it, if you're in East Asia or in Russia or in Mexico or here in the United States, if you're tapped into that divine matrix energy, man, you're tapped in. You know what I mean? If you're tapped in with that divine energy, then I don't see that there's a problem with that on how you tapped into it. You know what I mean? Now, if you're tapping into that and being a loving servant and doing, you know, helping people and trying to spread the word of good to humanity, then I believe that's good. You know what I mean? I don't believe that's bad. Now, my way to get sober may not be your way. You know what I mean? That's just how I am. That's just my frequencies, I believe. This is just how I was able to get sober. You know what I mean? This is just how I was able to kick a meth addiction habit. This is how I am able to deal with my childhood traumatic experiences. This is how I'm able to deal with my depression, with my anger issues, with my sadness, with my suicidal thoughts. That's how I deal with it. And I don't believe that that's wrong. You know what I mean? If I feel that love and divine energy in my heart and soul, then that's what it is. You know what I mean? And I'll continue to share it. You know what I mean? Now, if that divine energy tells me to and throws something else into my subconscious mind and my heart and soul to go connect with somebody else, or, you know, these other people, whatever it is, then that's what I do. You know what I mean? I feel that that's the calling. You know what I mean? Many people in the Christian community, they have a calling to do this or to do that. And I believe that's the same thing. You know what I mean? The calling is a calling regardless of how you are getting called. So long as it that it's in that you feel it in your heart and soul, and that you're connected to that divine energy. I believe that makes all the difference. You know what I mean? And, you know, when going back to that book that I was talking about, the Kybalion, man, it's kind of deals with talks about the Hermetic principles. You know what I mean? The seven Hermetic principles, and it's talking about the framework and how the energies are of a divine sense, and how you can move your life to do things. You know what I mean? And the way I was able to kick that habit was through practicing some of the things that are talked about in the Kybalion and in the Corpus Hermeticus teachings. You know what I mean? Because it's all about the mind, to me. That whatever you're doing in your life obviously is a mental thought process. It comes from something that you think about, something that you're believing through what you're seeing, what you're allowing into your subconscious mind. And for me, for a long time, I wasn't doing nothing but allowing a bunch of dark and negative things in there. And turn there, I was stuck in an addiction. You know what I mean? In turn there, I was stuck in a depression. In turn there, I was stuck in this whirlwind of being sad and mad, and just didn't know how to deal with that. And then having the PTSDs and the childhood traumatic experiences all coming together in my mind, that was just a wave of just misery for me personally, you know what I mean? And it wasn't until I got connected with that spiritual divine energy when it finally went away. You know what I mean? For me, that's what it took. For me, it took changing my mental thought process, changing people, places, and things, and incorporating things like meditation that, you know, a lot of you know that. And meditation is done in many religions and many spiritual practices, and you know, the Hindus and the Buddhists, you know, are high on that meditation process, and I don't see anything wrong with it. And that's where I found clarity. That's where I was able to tap in to that divine matrix energy. And man, when I did that, and still continue to do it today, it's been working for me. You know what I mean? It works for me, chanting and meditating and incorporating the prayers and things like that into that meditation. And it's just how I do it. I just feel that that's my spiritual calling for right now. You know, if it's supposed to change later on, well, then I'm sure that the energy is going to let me know. You know what I mean? But for right now, I feel comfortable. I feel happy. I feel the love of a divinity. You know what I mean? I do. And that's why I share it on the channel. You know what I mean? And I share many other things because, like I said, I don't believe not one thing is the right thing. I think that everybody's energy is different, and so therefore it's going to take different frequencies for you to tune in to that, to tap into that, to that divine energy. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, dude, I read the Kabbalion. It talks about the Hermetic teachings, the philosophy behind it, and the and practices, and how you can incorporate that in your daily life, and you know, go figure that I was already doing a lot of things that I read in that book, and not only that, but I could connect the dots, if you will, from things that I read through, you know, Islam, Christian, Catholic, Buddhist. All these things started making sense to me. You know what I mean? Because the dots started connecting. Now I could see this bigger picture, if you will. You know what I mean? I'm not just looking, let's just, you know, say like, I'm just not looking at Earth. Now I'm looking at everything. And it makes a whole lot more sense for me in my brain. You know what I mean? I can think. It makes me think clearer. Like I was like, oh wow, like I knew this like when I was a kid, and now I know why I kept dreaming that. You know what I mean? It's something like that, which is kind of cool to me. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, and just, you know, kind of throw that out there today. See if anybody else is interested in those in the Hermes Trismegistus, you know, the Hermetic teachings, and the Kabbalion, and that sort of thing. And I mean, it's just part of history. You know what I mean? And then it goes back to the you know, a lot of that comes from the Emerald Tablets, which is a real thing. You know what I mean? And so these teachings have been around for many thousands of years. You know what I mean? This is not something that just came up. It's something that the philosophers from ancient times were saying and doing, and kind of corroborating now with how scientists of today and philosophers of today believe the world, and how we're, you know, made up, and why we're here, and that, all that kind of good stuff. You know what I mean? But it's like, wow, how did these people from way back then know? You know what I mean? Why did they know? How did they know? You know, it kind of goes back to all those things. Like, wow, how did they build all those things that they built? You know what I mean? How did the Aztecs and the Mayans build them pyramids? How did the Egyptians do theirs? How did the people over in Cambodia build their pyramids? The people over in China, people over in Turkey. You know what I mean? Because there's pyramids all over the place, man. And even here, the place that's over in New Mexico, you know what I mean? How did all these freaking big structures, how are they built by these people that are ancient and didn't have what we have today? Or did they? You know what I mean? So that's just one of the things, you know. And to me, I believe that it's part of the energy, man. It's part of the divine energy, dude. And we're all connected. We're all connected somehow or another. We're all connected. You know what I mean? I don't care what religion you practice. I don't care where you're from, what, you know, nationality you are. We are all connected. We're one and the same. You know what I mean? So I love everybody, man, and it's great. And yeah. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there today, and you know, see what people say. You know, if people, you know, like it, or maybe they're you know, you guys are on that journey too. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, I guess that's going to be it for now. I guess until the next time, man. If you would please, man, at this time, give me a thumbs up, hit me a comment, you know, hit my subscribe button. You know, just know that when you do hit the subscribe button, it doesn't cost you a thing, man. But you know what? You'll be helping out another veteran, another homeless person, another person dealing with PTSDs, childhood traumatic experiences, drug addiction, alcoholism, depression, suicidal thoughts, my friends, because I have dealt with all those things at one point in time in my life. And guess what, man? I know a way out, and my way out could be your way out. So just, I guess until the next time on When the Smoke Clears, I am the Recovery Plug.